So I really wanted to talk about this one mention of, I guess, Rick Grimes. There was a question asked yesterday at San Diego Comic-Con about, will we see Rick Grimes in season 3? Or it was something like that anyways. I've been seeing people talk about that online. Like somebody, I guess, like it was a fan that asked the question, like whether or not Daryl's going to find out that Rick is alive or something like that. But David Zabel, the showrunner for The Walking Dead, Daryl Dixon, actually addressed the whole thing of, will Rick, Carol, and Daryl ever reunite again? And so I want to get into his comments here and talk about all that. So before going any further, make sure to be a subscriber if you do want to get all my Walking Dead content like this. There's so much to talk about. Honestly, there's actually a lot to talk about from the trailer. I mean, we're going to be talking about this stuff for a while now, right? But I do actually want to do a video after this one on the Carol and Sophia scene, because I want to talk about specifically what that could mean for Carol and just the amount of flashbacks, because we actually did get some confirmation that there is going to be some cameos in season 2 as well. So that's going to be really exciting. So I'll break that down in another video. And I also want to talk about the Walker variants, because there's like very crazy walkers in the Walking Dead Daryl Dixon season 2 trailer that Nicotero actually talked about as well, saying that they were embracing more of the Train to Busan walkers. And so I really want to get into that, because that's something that I really wanted. And he talked about just the idea of changing the rules a bit, obviously to keep things very fresh for The Walking Dead. So definitely make sure to be a subscriber if you want to get all my content on that. But to talk about Rick Grimes and the possible, reunion, with Daryl and Carol, potentially in season 3, that's how it's sort of answered and whatnot. And obviously, I think that we would have gotten a lot more answers on what's happening with Rick and Michonne if Scott Gimple was there. Scott Gimple wasn't feeling that well, and so he didn't show up. Who actually wrote a letter, and he was sick, and so he wasn't actually able to come to Comic-Con, which is definitely very unfortunate, because if you wanted any sort of Rick Grimes and Michonne update, it was going to be there, right? And so, we didn't get that there, and that is definitely one of the things that, in terms of being asked any questions about the universe, in terms of other spinoffs and all of that, that's usually what happens there, right? And I guess the confirmation that we do have as of now is that there wasn't anything, that they're ready to announce yet. So there's nothing that they're able to say, okay, there's this new show coming out right now, and we're going to be filming this summer or later on this winter or something like that. There's nothing that far along in the process, which to me, I guess I understand. They're focusing on the other spinoffs a lot, and they just sort of, they just had 3 spinoffs. If you really look at it, I know people are wanting another spinoff, but they literally just finished wrapping up The Walking Dead not even a full 2 years ago. And then right after that, they did Dead City season 1, Daryl Dixon season 1. They ended Fear the Walking Dead throughout all of that as well, and then literally right after that, The Ones Who Live season 1, and then now they're going into Daryl Dixon season 2. So right now, I think, is the time where, they're writing a bunch of stuff and coming up with a new show. And I do think that there will be something announced at some point. I just don't know when. New York Comic-Con is usually another bigger event of the year, and a lot of stuff does get announced then, so that's going to be happening at some point early October. It's the first week of October or something like that. Maybe there's already dates for that, but at that point, we'll be watching Daryl Dixon season 2, and I could see them announcing a bunch of stuff at that point. Comic-Con isn't the only time to announce stuff. The premieres of shows or the finales of shows are also times when, The Walking Dead usually announces stuff, so we didn't get necessarily the new show update or announcement or anything like that, or anything with Andrew Lincoln, but we did actually get the question asked though, will we see Rick, Daryl, and Carol reunite? And David Zabel, who is the showrunner for The Walking Dead, Daryl Dixon, said this on Scott's behalf. He literally says, on behalf of Scott, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he says that they want to connect characters in a lot of different ways, or a lot of different variations in the spinoffs and whatnot, and they're still working on season 3 and getting that done, but it's always a conversation. And the best he could say is that sometime in the future, he hopes the characters find a way to reconnect. And so basically, they all want it to happen. They're all working towards it, but we'll have to see how it happens, because the groundwork, I think, for that storyline still has to be laid right beforehand to build up to that moment. Just like The Ones Who Live, going into that show, we knew a lot of what the story was like. We knew a lot of, how they were building up to that moment. And so it just really helped for that show. And we knew a lot of the, the backstory and the setup for The Ones Who Live before even watching the show. So I think they got to do that here first, to get Rick, Daryl, and Carol and everyone else reunited. They got to set up some of the story here. And that's why it's going to be really important to watch these shows and follow what's going on with everything here. Because I think once you eventually get to that point, we're going to know, right? We're going to be like, okay, so that's exactly where they're going, which is what I think they'll be working towards. I think right now, Scott Gimple is like, you know what? We ended that, the CRM arc and whatnot. I think now we're going to work towards this other thing. He does seem to have an idea of where things are going to go next. Like, that was the one thing that he mentioned a lot during The Ones Who Live, is that, like, obviously, like, they knew how this story ended here, but he knows the next story, and he knows the next story after that. And it's just a lot of, like, crafting things here and there. He teased like the Triple P card a lot. So I'm really expecting that storyline to actually happen at some point. I don't know if it's going to be in season 2 of Daryl Dixon or in Dead City. I'm not entirely sure at all, but it looks like that storyline will finally happen at some point. And the important thing here to me is the fact that David Zabel said that there's always this conversation of like, you know, how do we, I guess, bring these characters together? How do we build up to certain moments? And I just wonder if the idea of Jeffrey Grimes is starting to catch on a little bit here, because Jeffrey Grimes, you know, that's a character that a lot of people, I mean, it's really interesting because when I first heard of him, I was just like, wait, what? Rick has a brother? And I think that's everybody's first reaction. And, you know, for the first couple of years, I was like, well, no, you can never introduce him because he never really had a brother on the show. In the comic, it was the same exact thing, though. Like, Rick never mentioned his brother once. There's only one mention, and it's like one thing of dialogue in the very beginning of the comics, and it's Lori who actually mentions it, and she's not even talking to Rick or anything. Like, Rick doesn't acknowledge his brother at all in the comic. It's just, it was never a thing. Like, literally, there's no acknowledgement of his brother, Jeffrey Grimes, at all. And so, it wouldn't be that different on the show. Like, Rick, you know, obviously they could explain it a little bit more, like maybe, you know, they haven't talked in years, and all of that. And the reason why I bring this up is because, obviously, for season 3, they are going to be going to Spain. That's the confirmation that we got yesterday, was that Daryl Dixon season 3 has been renewed for season 3. And it's very interesting that they're going with the Walking Dead Daryl Dixon. If you notice, there's no The Book of Carol. So I think The Book of Carol really is just like specifically for season 2. But after that, the show is just going to go back to being called The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon. And I think that's probably what the show is just called in general, is just The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon. It's just for season 2, there's going to be this like extra title here because obviously Carol is going to be showing up in this season and whatnot, right? So because they're going to Spain for season 3, and that's where Jeffrey Grimes is introduced. He's actually in Barcelona, Spain. Is that a place that they can go to right now? Because obviously they wrote a lot of season 3 at this point, right? Like season 3 has been written. I mean, I'm sure they still have to write a lot of different things here and there, but I do think that season 3 for the most part has been written. And obviously season 4, they will be filming out there next year. And so I could just see this show getting into that. I think that would be really, really incredible if we actually did see Jeffrey Grimes. Because again, at first I wasn't the biggest fan of it, but over time you're just like, you know what, this kind of makes sense. I actually do kind of get why you could do something like this, because you're just doing what the comic storyline is. And I know it's really insane, but there would be so much excitement there from a lot of people, the fact that Rick actually has a brother, and you're just adding that much more depth to the world, right? And they did say that there's more Walking Dead cameos happening, and so that's going to be really exciting to see. I mean, obviously we know Sophia will be there. I'm expecting Ed, and there may be other cameos as well. But Jeffrey Grimes as a character, I think, would be really incredible. And so, yeah, you know, in terms of Rick Grimes' possible appearance this season, I don't think that's very likely unless it's like a flashback of some kind. You know, I mean, they talked about cameos. There's going to be a lot of cameos this season and whatnot. And I guess if Daryl finds out if Rick's alive, like, it makes sense that Rick could be involved in some way here in the story, but I just don't know how you would do that, especially because, you know, they filmed season 2 last year. I didn't see anything with Andrew Lincoln there being on set, and usually if a moment like that happened, you're probably going to know, but then again, they are really good at filming things in secret, right? So it's possible that we just don't know. And so going into season 3 in terms of the writing and all that, I mean, again, because they're filming right away, because Andrew Lincoln is filming another show actually right now, I just don't think it's possible for him to be in season 3, but certain mentions or certain things like that, obviously I think it's going to happen. It's just a question of Jeffrey Grimes, I feel like. I think that's the thing that people should be focused a lot more on is, will we see Jeffrey Grimes here? And the reason why I'm talking about this, and I'm not like brushing it off as like, oh, this is just so ridiculous, is specifically because Daryl's in Spain. Like beforehand, when we used to talk about this all the time, it was always, well, no, that's never going to happen because Daryl would have to go to Spain, and how would they ever get there? Like that was always the thing. Like no one ever really acknowledged that idea because it just seemed ridiculous to have Jeffrey Grimes come back to America and then go and see Rick and whatnot. It was just like, wait, what? And so the fact that our characters are now in France and eventually going to be in Spain in season 3, you know, I mean, it really does create the possibility that, you know, maybe he didn't actually die like he does in the comic, and that he did survive, and that he will show up at some point there. Because, I mean, you're literally going to Spain. Like, I just think, yeah, I think it's very possible anyways. But I'm going to leave it here. Definitely post all your thoughts down below. Do you think we could see Jeffrey Grimes in season 3 of The Walking Dead, Daryl Dixon? If not Jeffrey Grimes, do you think we'll see Rick Grimes in season 3? And yeah, post all your thoughts down below. Hope you guys all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.